Good day, and how are you today? Hope everything's great. Today we have Bill Brooks, who's the executive director of the Sheldon Museum.
Morning, Betty.
Good morning. So we want to hear what's going on over there at the Sheldon Museum. I pass it lots of times when I go for walks.
Right, it's right across the street from the Ilsley, so it's hard to miss.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, the Sheldon has been around since 1882, just to
Really?
give you a little history.
All right.
Henry Sheldon, who was from Salisbury, Vermont, founded the museum. He was an inveterate collector. He wasn't a man of means. His family were farmers in Salisbury. But he had this passion for collecting. So he started to collect, and he bought the house across the street from the Ilsley. It's 1 Park Street. He bought it, it's an historic home. The house was actually built in 1829 by Judd, it's called the Judd Harris House. There were 2 marble merchants, a father-in-law and a son-in-law. So it's quite a spectacular home. And then, based on his collection, he had the museum chartered in 1882 after buying it. And it was chartered as the Sheldon Art Museum, Archaeological, and Historical Society.
Yes.
It's a long title.
Big.
So even though we've changed the title to the Henry Sheldon Museum of Vermont History, it still fulfills the missions that he assigned to it: art collection, archaeology.
Vermont archaeology or other states?
Just here.
Just
Everything
here.
is associated with Middlebury and Addison County.
Oh,
That was the
Purpose.
crux of his collection.
Yeah.
And after he died in 1907, he left it to the community. So it's a nonprofit educational organization funded by members and by donations, not subsidized at all by the state or the town of Middlebury.
Oh, really?
So we have to raise all the money to have it operate. So it's operated successfully since 1882 because of the community and community support. And it's a modest entry fee of $5 for an adult, $4.50 for a senior, and children under 6 are free. Other than that, it's $3. So anyway, it's a great organization. I came to it 6 years ago as executive director. And I was introduced to Middlebury by my mother, who grew up here. Her dad, Dr. Jacob Johnson Ross, was a physician. And that's why she grew up here. And then she married my dad after they met in college. So I actually grew up in Arlington, Virginia, but came here every summer for at least 1 day because my family had a place on Lake Champlain. So I've been with the museum for 6 years. Before that, I actually came to Vermont in 1997 to head the Vermont State Craft Centers for 5 years. Then I was the development director at the Coolidge Foundation in Plymouth Notch. And then I came to the Sheldon. So it's been like a homecoming to get back to Middlebury. And my parents and my grandparents are buried up in the Middlebury Cemetery. And that's where I'll be buried.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful community, and the Sheldon is a wonderful museum celebrating the history of this town and this county.
Do you still get artifacts that people either had or just found?
Well, our missions, in addition, we have an archives, which works on paper. So most people may not be aware of it because the archives is a separate building in the complex. And it's open on Thursday and Friday afternoons, and that works on paper: photography, diaries, scrapbooks, and there are many books that have been produced as a result of researchers coming to this wonderful collection of documents that trace the history of Addison County. And just to give you a few examples, one was Charity and Sylvia. This was a book that came out after extensive research. It's a couple that lived in Weybridge. They were known to be married, even though they weren't, because it was the early 1800s. So this image that's on the cover most recently was in Richard Saunders' exhibit at the Middlebury College Museum on portraits, and now it's going to the Smithsonian to be exhibited in a portrait exhibit there. So here's this little town of, this couple was from Weybridge, and they're going to end up being celebrated in Washington, D.C. And another recent book is called Two Pointers of Dead Creek, and Douglas Brooks, he's no relation to me, but he's a boat historian, and the Henry Sheldon Museum has subsidized 3 years of classes at the Hannaford Career Center, where the students under Douglas's leadership and Jake Burnham's leadership have interviewed people who owned trapping boats in the Dead Creek area in Lake Champlain, and so it's a history class. Then they learned how to interview the trappers, and then they learned how to make the boats. So this book has recently come out.
And that includes all what you how to make the boats and
yes.
stuff. So.
And we actually have, in addition to this, in the museum bookshop, we also have the drawings. So if someone's interested in making their own boat, they can use these drawings.
Oh, wow.
And then for those who might be interested, Joanne Langrock has produced a book on Middlebury stores and businesses that traces all the stores and businesses in Middlebury for an extensive period of time. So all this type of information was culled from our archives at the museum.
And the other things that they came all from information too.
Yes, but I probably can talk about those when we talk about what's coming up.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a great history.
Oh, it's a fabulous place, and once people discover it, they fall in love with it, and that's how we're able to operate so successfully. Myself and my 2 associates, Mary Manley and Eva Garcelon-Hart, we couldn't run it without volunteers. And when I first came here, I had a party at my house, and I invited 100 volunteers. 75 came to the party, so it just shows you the strength of the volunteer effort, as you know, in our community, because it's also reflected in other nonprofits, whether it be the opera, the town hall theater, or the Folk Life Center. We all rely heavily on volunteers, so anybody's interested, I invite them to come by.
What's your phone number?
388-2117.
2117.
Right.
All right. So get up and get going, everybody. Now you have some new things going on.
Right. Our big event that's coming up is the 25th anniversary concert, the Pops concert and fireworks display. So for 25 years this has been held. This year the Vermont Philharmonic is the orchestra, and they've been with us for 6 years. It's held in the athletic field behind the Mahaney Center for the Arts at Middlebury College. We couldn't do it without Middlebury College helping out. And the concert, grounds are open at 5:30. Concert begins at 7:30, followed by the fireworks display. And the Vermont Philharmonic will play patriotic songs, contemporary songs, Broadway hits. And this year we have a soloist, a young man from actually grew up in Colchester, but most recently he's starred. His name is Merritt David James, and he's the current performing in New York in Andrew Lloyd Webber's School of Rock, which everyone's heard of Andrew Lloyd Webber. And the School of Rock, I think it opened I'm not sure when it opened, but it opened recently. And he has a major role there, and he's performed once before for the concert. Tickets are only $20 for adults, $10 for youth 12 to 18, and it's free for children under 12. So it's a great family event to come and hear music, picnic, and enjoy this wonderful spot that's between the Adirondacks and the Green Mountains.
We sometimes when we don't go, we can see out our window and hear.
You can hear the music and see the fireworks.
Mostly the fireworks,
Right.
Not so much the music, although that comes a little bit now and then.
Sure.
But it's fun to. Well, I always loved fireworks. Ever since I was a child, I've loved
Sure.
fireworks. My father did them all the time.
Right. Well, this is a group out of the Montpelier area that comes every year. North Star Fireworks does the display.
Yeah, because you have to be now in the state. You have to be authorized.
Well, they're licensed, and I get a permit that's signed by the fire chief, the town, and the police. And
well, we went out to where you go have the
athletic
show.
field, right?
Yeah, and before anything's doing, all the kids would roll down the hill.
Right.
They all
That's right.
Yeah, they rolled.
They want to entertain themselves sometimes during the concert, but sometimes while their parents are having their picnic.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, before the concert starts, sometimes.
Sure.
Yeah, and then they get that, and.
But right now we have the museum consists of 4 buildings. It's the Judd Harris House, which is the historic house. As I said, was built in 1829, and then because of this extensive document collection, the community raised money, or the trustees raised money in 1972, and built a 3-story archival section. And then in 1992, the archives is at the end of the complex. In 1992, between the Judd Harris House and the archives, there was built a 2-story exhibit area. And Henry Sheldon himself built a barn that's also part of the property in about 1890. And one of the real joys of the museum is the garden that we have. It's one of the Ilsley has a lovely garden in the back, but our garden is accessible right from the street, and it's maintained by the Middlebury Garden Club.
Yeah, I've been there.
Right. So some days when the gardeners are there, there'll be a dozen Middlebury Garden Club members taking care of the grounds and the beautiful flowers. So we can't thank them enough, and it's a real treat for the residents and visitors to Middlebury to see this in-town garden.
Well, they'll appreciate that you've talked about them,
Right.
because they do work hard, and they've done this for years and years and years.
They have. It's a fabulous contribution to the town and to us.
Yeah, and it is a great flower. You walk down the path, it's flowers on both sides. And
Sure.
the old entrance to the
Right.
Sheldon
It's right to the.
has flowers on either side of that walk too.
That's correct. So
People still go and look at it, even though they can't get in the building that way.
that's right.
Yeah.
And upcoming, we've just finished an exhibit. So we're setting up an exhibit now. It's called "Tell Me a Tale." Draw me a picture, tell me a tale. So we've invited 18 Vermont children's author illustrators to come and exhibit their drawings or photographs. Plus, it runs from June to October, and during that time period, we will be offering author readings, and we'll also be having presentations and educational programs.
Can you read the books yourselves?
We'll have
If you-
books out.
Books have to stay there, though.
Right. So to give you an idea, Peter Laurie is a local, and this is just one of the books. This is written in the children's edition. He canoed from the length of the Hudson River, from its beginnings
Oh, wow.
all the way to the ocean. So a couple of images from that trek will be on display.
I mean, big pictures?
Yes,
Yeah.
photographs. Another wonderful, so we have outdoor-related authors, is Jim Aronsky. For those that are interested in fly fishing, this is a very old book that he wrote, Flies in the Water, Fish in the Air, and anybody that either wants to learn about fly fishing or is a fly fisher person, rather than fly fisherman or woman, I guess. And his work will be on display. We have a couple of local authors in addition to Warren Kimball, And he'll have his paintings on display, plus he has, I think, 2 or 3 children's books that will be available to read. Not all of them are still in circulation, but and this is one in the typical Warren Kimball fashion. He has a horse and a sheep here
And what's the other one?
and a cow.
A cow.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And
Oh, that black part is part of this coloring.
right,
And the cow.
right.
Yeah.
And then a wonderful Vermonter is Harry Bliss. Harry Bliss lives in Burlington. He writes cartoons, both for 7 Days and for the New Yorker magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And he did a whole series of books on Bailey. This is just one of them. And
Is Bailey the dog?
Bailey's the dog. And he also did one, I didn't bring the cover, but it's Bailey Goes to the Museum. Doesn't happen to be the Sheldon, it happens to be a non-art museum, but these are just 4 of the 18
Authors?
So, and other ones that you might recognize because they're local are Phoebe Stone, Ashley Wolf, and Woody Jackson, and
Yes.
another wonderful is Thatcher Hurd. Thatcher Hurd is actually lives in Berkeley, but has a second home in Starksboro.
Uh-huh.
So he's coming in June. His dad was an author, as was his mother's dad, wrote Midnight Moon, which a lot of people of a certain age will recognize. And Mary Azarian is another, they're all Vermonters, is another, she's a woodblock prince. So it'll be an exciting exhibit, very diverse, but you can,
And when is that again?
it opens on June 13th and runs through the middle of October.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So,
Most of your shows last 3 or 4 months.
well,
5 months.
our primary season is the summer.
Yeah.
That's enhanced because of Middlebury being a tourist destination. So our numbers and visitors jump from July 4th weekend up to the foliage weekend.
Ah.
So
Yeah.
it's
In October.
right.
Yeah.
So I just want our local residents to be as many visitors as the tourists.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important because they also help with keeping up the Sheldon Museum.
That's
too.
correct.
Yes.
Now we do have what I call 3 pop-up exhibits right now. And one, we have a wonderful collection of children's shoes, not unlike this sample which I brought. So we have a small case of children's shoes. These were probably handmade and quite lovely.
Can you imagine having a foot that size?
Well, you
Well,
did
we
once, Betty, and so
we
did
did
I.
once.
And so the children's shoe exhibit coincides with the children's book, is the reason.
Uh-huh.
So that's in one of our closed cases. Another exhibit we have is on a local blacksmith farrier. His name was A.B. Smith, and he was located on Washington Street in the early 1900s.
Uh-huh.
When my grandfather lived here and my mother was young, we still have pictures of them. They lived in what is now the Kitchell House with a car and a horse, my mother on a horse. So I don't know whether she's been long deceased, so I don't know whether A.B. Smith was my grandfather's blacksmith or not. So we have his old trade sign that is this big, says A.B. Smith. We have some of the horseshoes that he was a metalsmith that he made.
Oh, he made his own horseshoes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he also, we have several evidence of patents, U.S. patents that he had to help in the process of his blacksmithing. And then the Morgan Horse Museum has lent us bones from a horse leg. So we have those on display, and you can see how these horses are pretty big, but they have very slender bones. And we also have,
But they must be strong because
Oh, yeah.
they really, pound on
Right.
it with them. Yeah.
and we have some real hooves from a deceased horse. So you can, and so we have the horseshoes, and then we have also all the equipment he used. He made his own equipment if it was metal, so that's also on display. So that, and we have for 60 years there was a paper mache, 16 hands high, life-size horse in the barn that was built in 1890, but sometime in 60 years ago, 3 of our trustees brought the horse over to coincide with what was then the exhibit for the J.B. Smith blacksmith exhibit.
And
So we
that's-
brought the horse out of the barn,
Yeah.
took 3 people to move it, and to get into the entrance, the metal ears were detachable, so we would detach the ears, brought it into the exhibit. So the horse can't go upstairs, that's where the Furrier exhibit is. The horse is downstairs, and the exhibit is upstairs. And in some cases, such as this, the children's stories will mention horses. So there's a tie-in to that.
So it's all made of paper mache?
Yes.
But and so it's heavy.
Well, I'm sure
The whole
there's
body is.
I'm sure there's structures that hold the
Yeah.
that help the
Inside.
paper mache stand up.
Yeah.
And then the third exhibit is an ephemera exhibit. So when we talk about paper that's in the archives, Henry Sheldon started by collecting, and anytime there was a show at the then Town Hall Theater, he had the poster, or he collected very colorful items on paper, and they deal with medicine, they deal with entertainment, and so one of the cases has that. So we've chosen as the picture to put on our Pops exhibit, even though it's not related necessarily to music, is this colorful back of a cigarette ad that dates from the late 1800s. So we've said, catch the Pops, don't miss it, because this gentleman with a mustache, this very unique gentleman with a mustache, is about to catch a ball. And then another slogan we're using is the best catch of the summer, which is the Pops exhibit on June 29th. But this is one of the examples of what's in the ephemera exhibit.
Now, do you collect, say, diaries from today, or a month or 2 or a year or 2 ago, so that in 50 years you will have the diary of what's happening?
Well, we should, but at this point we don't have a room and the staff. The collection we have, which includes a lot of diaries, and our main mission is historical diaries or journals.
Yeah.
And if we had more staff, only have 3, we're all part-time, plus volunteers, or we had more room or more money, then we would. Recently, there's a journal has been brought to us by a young man who worked in a marble works down in Brandon, and he's sort of a folk artist. He has drawings in it, both of his contemporaries. This is in the late 1900s. Plus, he has drawn the equipment that was in the marble, but that came in, and we're having that itself will have to be conserved because it's 100 years old, and the binding is falling apart, and the paper is dirty. So there's always a challenge. We'd like to continue to collect, but I've had to say no more often than yes, and the diary or the scrapbook should be Middlebury or Addison County.
I was the executor for a farmer, and he had a diary. So when he died, probably in the 60s or so, he had this diary from way back in the 20s.
Oh, that would be a wonderful to
And
have.
I did try to give it to the museum. I can't remember now whether I managed it or didn't
Right.
manage. That was a good 20 years ago.
Sure.
So,
Well, you give me his name after we've had the interview, and I'll check.
okay.
Because that is the type of, because it's going, I mean, we're primarily an agricultural county.
Yeah.
And so if it was a Addison County farmer,
Yeah. It was a Middlebury farmer. as a
well,
matter of fact.
we would be interested.
Yeah. All right. I'll give you the name after.
Okay, that'd be
All right.
wonderful.
So, you need more room. Well, where would you do more room? Where would you have
Well,
more room?
it would be like the Congregational Church. They had to build another building
Yeah, but I mean,
to do it.
do you have space?
Well, prior to my engagement, there were several plans to build space so there could be a larger meeting room, there could be a party room, or there could be room for more archives, and it would go between the two. The barn might be modernized, and then another building could go between the barn and the archives. And there were drawings considered by my predecessors and the trustees to do that. But there again, it has to do with planning. It has to do to raising money. I forget what they've had to raise for the Congregational Church edition, several $1 million, I think. So we've thought about it because we want to grow and do just what you have suggested,
Yeah.
and collect contemporary items that will be historical for people living in the next century.
Even these TV shows which are sent to you
Yes,
are history.
That's
because
correct.
I do people all in town, or maybe Addison County,
yes,
and what they feel about school, or what they feel about healthcare, or how they're dealing with teaching, or whatever subject, the town business, and
right.
garbage collection. I mean,
Right.
I've had
Is that everyone? Well,
I've
that's
had, all kinds
so
of
you've
people.
moved from paper into, well, film, and it depends how we preserve it.
Yeah,
And I think that's the challenge with all the work that's here.
yeah, because 50 years from now, if somebody wants to know what the town felt like,
Right.
but there's maybe a video of it.
Yes,
Of what
that's
the
a great
town
resource,
Yeah,
and that's why I can't thank you enough
yeah,
for what you've done and what this organization does.
does, yes.
To help
allowing
us-
me to do here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to help us remember what's going on
Yeah.
in the future, what went on for the last 30 or 40 years.
Now, we have about 2 or 3 minutes left. So
Right.
is there something that you would like to make sure you get in?
Well, I would
Barbara?
just like everyone to make a visit to the Sheldon, especially if you have children this summer. Come over and also take out a membership. It's very reasonable, $35 for a single membership, $50 for a family.
And does that get you in then free?
Yes,
Yeah. That you can, if you pay your membership, you can go in and see
for free.
free.
You can go to the
Well, nice.
events for free. You
Yeah.
can come visit the exhibits.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Well, it's been a joy, and I
And-
can't thank you for everything you've done for the community doing this or in the legislature.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Bye-bye. Have a nice day.